I kicked out my girlfriend because she said my relationship with my brother was disgusting. My brother Ethan and I have always been close, like really close. When our parents died in a car crash when I was 19 and he was 15, I basically became his dad overnight. I dropped out of college, got two jobs, and made sure he could stay in school and have a normal life. We lived in this tiny apartment above a pizza place that smelled like garlic bread 24/7. But we made it work. For 4 years, it was just us. I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning for my warehouse job, come home and help him with homework, then go to my night shift at a gas station. On weekends, we would play video games, watch movies, order Chinese food, and just hang out. He told me everything about his life, his friends, girls he liked, stupid stuff that happened at school. I was the one who taught him how to drive, took him to get his first job, helped him apply to colleges. When he graduated high school, I cried harder than I did at our parents' funeral. This kid I basically raised was going to college on a full scholarship. He hugged me and said none of it would have happened without me. That I was the best big brother anyone could ask for. Even when he went away to college, we stayed close. He would call me every other day just to talk. During breaks, he would come stay with me instead of going to friends' houses. We would still do our movie nights and order way too much food. Sometimes his college friends would come visit, and they always said how cool it was, that we were so tight. Then I met Jessica. She was cute, worked at the coffee shop near my apartment, and seemed really sweet at first. We started dating and things were going good. But she started getting weird about Ethan, like when he would call during dinner. She would roll her eyes and make comments about how we talked too much. When he came home for winter break, she got annoyed that I wanted to spend time with him. One night, Ethan and I were watching this dumb action movie on the couch, sharing a bowl of popcorn, and just laughing at how bad it was. Jessica came out of the bedroom and saw us, and got this disgusted look on her face. She said we were too old to be cuddling on the couch like that. We were not even cuddling, just sitting next to each other like normal people do. A few weeks later, she started making comments about how it was weird that Ethan still had a key to my apartment, about how he should not be able to just show up whenever he wanted, about how I needed to set boundaries because we were not kids anymore. I tried to explain that he was not just my brother, he was like my son, too, that I raised him. She said that was exactly the problem. The breaking point came last month. Ethan was having a rough time at school. Some girl broke his heart, and he was really upset about it. He called me crying at like 11 o'clock at night, which he never does. So, I drove the 3 hours to his campus to pick him up and bring him home for the weekend. When we got back to my place, Jessica was waiting up, and she was furious. She started yelling about how I dropped everything to run to him, like he was my boyfriend or something. How it was not normal for a 25-year-old man to be so obsessed with his little brother. How she felt like she was dating both of us because everywhere she went, there he was. Ethan tried to apologize and said he would just go to a hotel. But that made me even madder. I told Jessica she was way out of line, that Ethan was not going anywhere, and if she had a problem with my relationship with my brother, she could leave. She looked at me like I had just slapped her and said the most messed up thing I have ever heard. She said our relationship was disgusting and inappropriate, and that everyone probably thought we were gay for each other. I saw red. Ethan went white and just stared at the floor. I told her to get her stuff and get out of my apartment right now. She started backtracking and saying she did not mean it like that. But the damage was done. She had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. She stood there for a second like she couldn't believe I was serious, then started crying and saying she was just frustrated and jealous, and didn't actually think those things, that she just felt pushed aside. But I was already opening the closet and grabbing her overnight bag and shoving clothes into it, because nothing she said after that mattered anymore. You don't get to accuse me of something twisted like that about the one person in my life I sacrificed everything for and then expect to walk it back with tears. Ethan kept apologizing over and over even though he'd done absolutely nothing wrong, which somehow made me angrier, because the last thing I ever wanted was for him to feel like a burden or a problem in my life. So I told him to go sit on the couch and put on something dumb while I handled it. Jessica kept saying we needed to talk, that I was being dramatic, that I was choosing him over her, and I told her flat out that yes, I was, and I would make that choice every single time without hesitation. She left about 20 minutes later, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames, and the apartment went dead quiet. Ethan didn't look up from the TV, just stared straight ahead like he was trying not to cry, and that broke me more than anything she said. I sat next to him and put my arm around his shoulders the same way I had 1,000 times before, and after a minute he leaned into me and said in a small voice that he was sorry for ruining my relationship. I told him to never say that again. That if someone couldn't respect the most important relationship in my life, Then they had no place in it, and that nothing about us was wrong or shameful or weird. We stayed up way too late that night talking, like we used to, about his breakup, about school, about stupid stuff, about our parents, about how hard everything still was sometimes even years later. And by the time we finally went to sleep, it felt like a weight had been lifted, even though I was technically single again. The next few days were messy. Jessica blew up my phone with texts ranging from angry to apologetic to guilt-tripping, telling me her friends agreed it was strange, telling me I'd regret throwing away a relationship over my brother, telling me she just wanted to feel like a priority. And every message just made it clearer that she fundamentally didn't understand me or my life. I blocked her after she sent one last text saying she hoped Ethan would grow up and move on someday so I could have a normal relationship, because I realized I didn't want to spend my life constantly defending the person I loved most. Ethan stayed with me an extra week before going back to school, and before he left he asked really carefully if I was sure I was okay and if I resented him at all, and I told him the truth, that the only thing I regretted was not ending it sooner when the comments first started. After he went back, a couple mutual friends reached out saying Jessica had been telling people a very different version of the story, that I was overly attached and refused to let my brother grow up. And for a brief moment I felt that familiar urge to explain myself, to justify my life to people who hadn't lived it. But then I remembered how tired I was of doing that. Anyone who knew us, really knew us, understood immediately. Some of my friends actually told me they admired what I'd done for Ethan and that they wished they had someone like that in their lives. A few weeks later, Ethan invited me to visit campus again, not because he was falling apart, but because he wanted to show me around, introduce me to friends, take me to his favorite coffee place. And as I watched him laughing and confident and happy, I felt this deep sense of peace knowing I'd protected that bond instead of letting someone poison it. Losing Jessica hurt in the abstract way breakups always do, but it never felt like a mistake. If anything, it clarified what kind of future I wanted. One where my partner didn't see my past sacrifices as competition, where love wasn't measured by isolation, where family wasn't something you tolerated but something you respected. I don't know who I'll end up with someday, but I know this much for sure: anyone who wants to be with me will have to understand that my brother isn't baggage. He's the proof of who I am, and if that makes them uncomfortable, they can walk out the same door Jessica did because some lines once crossed don't deserve a second chance. Story to my wife vanished. No warning, just a text. We're in Hawaii. Take care of the kids. 5 confused children stood in the parking lot. I called, no answer. So? I made a decision. This morning, my phone blew up. She was back and furious. Chapter 1, the text that shattered everything. It was just past 7 p.m. on a warm Thursday evening. I had just pulled into the school parking lot, ready to pick up our 5 kids from an after-school enrichment program. My wife Madison had arranged the schedule for the week like she always did. Her texts were normally relentless. Pick up Tyler at 6:10, don't forget Leia's piano book. Emma can't eat peanuts. Remember that. But that day, there had been nothing. Radio silence. As I parked and turned off the ignition, my phone buzzed. It was from her. Just one sentence. A text that didn't make sense. Not immediately. We're in Hawaii. Take care of the kids. I stared at it, blinking, rereading. Was it a joke? Then in the rearview mirror, I saw them. 5 little faces, our children walking toward the car, backpack slung, looking tired and confused. All 5 were supposed to be picked up by Madison. Where's Mom? Tyler, our 10-year-old, asked as he opened the door. I forced a smile. She had an emergency. I'm here instead. But my hands were trembling. Back home, I dialed her once, twice, then 10 more times. Straight to voicemail. No explanations, no calls, no video messages, just silence. The next morning, I texted again. What do you mean we? Who are you with? What about the kids? Are you okay? Talk to me, Maddie, please. Days passed, then weeks. Not a single response. She was just gone. I found myself cooking for 5, brushing long hair before school, packing lunches, comforting nightmares. I called her mother. She hadn't heard a thing. Her sister, clueless, work? She requested unpaid leave. HR said casually. She planned this. She disappeared, leaving me alone with the full weight of fatherhood and no roadmap. But I'm not the man I used to be. Not anymore. Something in me hardened. So, I made a decision. Chapter 2, the decision. 2 weeks. That's how long it had been since Madison vanished. 2 weeks of chaotic school runs, forgotten lunches, and breaking down in the laundry room at 2 a.m. while folding socks that didn't match. 2 weeks of avoiding questions from the kids like, when's Mommy coming back? And did she take a plane or a rocket ship to Hawaii? And through it all, the silence from her side was deafening. But silence wasn't the worst part. It was the audacity, the assumption that I'd just shoulder it all. That I'd crumble quietly, while she soaked in sunsets with whoever the we in her message was. On the morning of day 15, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the breakfast I'd made. Pancakes shaped like animals because Emma had cried the night before and said she missed Mom's giraffe pancakes. The kids had just left for school with the neighbor's teen who offered to help after watching me nearly fall asleep standing. And that's when it clicked. She abandoned us. Not just me, the children, their lives, their stability. For what? An escape, a fling, a new life? No more waiting, no more pleading. So I made the decision. I was going to protect our children. And I was going to rebuild a life without her. But first, I needed answers. I pulled out my laptop, fingers trembling with rage and resolve, and opened our shared cloud account. Madison wasn't tech-savvy, and I had set up all our devices, including the automatic backup from her phone and MacBook. I dug through Sin's photos, documents, flight confirmation emails, and there it was. A reservation at a luxury beach resort in Maui to tickets, her name, and Ethan Dono. I froze. Ethan, my ex-business partner, my best man at our wedding. The man who 3 years ago had smiled at my children and toasted to forever. I leaned back in my chair as fury bubbled in my chest. She didn't just run away. She ran to him. She didn't just abandon her kids. She traded them for a fantasy. And now I was going to take everything from her. But I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I would wait. And when she came crawling back, as people like her always do, she would find her perfect dream life in ashes. Chapter 3. The setup. I didn't rage. I didn't call. I didn't scream at her or text Ethan death threats. That's what they'd expect. Some broken husband unraveling. No. I played the long game. I started by contacting a family lawyer, one of the best in the city. Not for divorce just yet, but for custody. I needed legal protection for the kids. Madison had abandoned them without warning or a care in the world, and I had the text message, the flight bookings, and the complete absence of communication to prove it. My lawyer, Sarah Greaves, leaned back in her chair after reviewing the documents. She's toast, she said bluntly. The court will eat this up. A mother who disappears without contact, leaves the kids without care, and runs off to Hawaii with another man. You have grounds for full custody and emergency protection orders. Perfect. Next. I met with a financial advisor. Quietly, secretly, I began moving our joint funds into accounts that were now solely in my name. Not illegally, but with receipts, documented expenses, all tied to the care of the children. School fees, medical appointments, food, clothing, daycare, everything I had now been doing alone. I canceled her cards, froze the joint account. She left me the responsibility. Now she'd get none of the benefits. And then I waited. 3 more weeks passed. The kids had started adjusting, asking less about where she was. I kept them close. I didn't speak ill of her to them. I let her dig her own grave quietly. And just when I thought she'd never come back, she did. It was 7:42 a.m. on a Tuesday, when my phone lit up with her name, a FaceTime request. I ignored it. Seconds later, another. Then a call. Then 5 text messages in a row. Where are my kids? Why aren't you answering? I'm back in town. We need to talk now. You're being insane. We need to co-parent. You're hurting them by not letting me see them. And there it was. The gaslighting, the panic, the realization that her little fantasy was over. And I hadn't just waited. I had moved on without her. So I finally picked up the call. Her face appeared on screen, sunburnt and frantic, eyes twitching with fury. Where are the kids? She barked. I didn't blink. At school. You know where they've been for the past 5 weeks. While you were too busy sipping cocktails with Ethan, she flinched. You don't get to talk to me like that. I'm their mother. You were? I interrupted coldly. But mothers don't abandon their children with a text. Her voice cracked. This wasn't abandonment. It was just time for me. I needed a break. I stared straight into the camera. Well, congratulations, you got your break and I got everything else. Then I hung up and waited for the next move. Chapter 4. The fallout begins. She showed up at the house the next morning. No call, no warning. Just the sound of tires screeching into the driveway and a frantic knock at the front door. I opened it slowly. She stood there dressed like she'd walked straight off the beach. Designer shades in her tangled hair, a sleeveless white blouse, and fake calm barely veiling the storm beneath. Where are they? She asked, voice tight. School, I replied flatly. Where they're supposed to be. She tried to push past me, but I stepped in her way. You don't live here anymore, Madison. Her nostrils flared. What the hell is wrong with you? I come back after a few weeks, and suddenly you're acting like I'm some kind of stranger. You are a stranger, I said, not raising my voice. You vanished. You texted me like I was a babysitter. You didn't even say goodbye to your children. I needed space. I needed to breathe. No, Madison, I said, crossing my arms. You needed permission to fly to Hawaii with another man and abandon your family. And guess what? You never asked for it. She stared at me, jaw trembling. You can't keep them from me. I'm their mother. I can, I said coolly. And I already am. You'll be hearing from my attorney later today. She blinked. You got a lawyer? I didn't answer. I just handed her an envelope. It was full of documentation. A timeline of her disappearance, copies of the text. She sent receipts for everything I paid for. In her absence, emergency custody papers already filed. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. I didn't mean to be gone so long, she muttered. Ethan, he told me it was just going to be a short trip, but then we lost track of time. I laughed once, cold, bitter. You lost track of 5 weeks? She looked up, her eyes now wet. I want to fix this. I tilted my head. You mean Ethan dumped you? Her silence confirmed everything. I continued. You chose him over your children, and now that he's gone, you think you can come back here and pick up where you left off? I made a mistake. No, Madison, I whispered. You made choices. Then I closed the door behind it. I heard her fall to her knees and sob, but I didn't open it again. And later that evening, I got a call from Sarah, my lawyer. She just tried to file for joint custody, she said, amused. But she didn't know you already beat her to it. The court's reviewing everything. With what we have, she doesn't stand a chance. I looked around at our quiet home, at the drawings taped to the fridge, at the family Madison had discarded like trash, and I smiled for the first time in weeks. Chapter 5: The Public Unraveling. It didn't take long for the cracks in Madison's carefully curated life to become gaping fractures. By the end of the week, the court issued a temporary sole custody order, granted to me. Madison was only permitted supervised visitation pending a full evaluation by Child Services. Her Hawaii getaway had raised serious red flags. But what shattered her most was the court's decision to mandate therapy and parental fitness assessments before she could even be considered for joint custody. She stormed into the hearing that day, wearing a crisp blazer like it was armor, face powdered to perfection. But the moment the judge laid out the terms and called her actions reckless parental abandonment, I watched her mask crumble bit by bit. Meanwhile, I said nothing. I just handed over receipts, timelines, and mails. I let her own choices speak louder than I ever could, and the humiliation didn't stop there. The school got wind of what happened when she tried to show up during lunchtime to surprise the kids. She was escorted off the property by security, while her oldest Tyler stood frozen behind the cafeteria window. That same evening, the PTA group chat exploded. Screenshots of her Facebook photos from Hawaii, cocktails, her in a bikini on the yacht, Ethan kissing her neck were suddenly circulating like wildfire. One of the other moms, a friend of mine from the neighborhood, posted this. She vanished for a month to play Mistress in Maui, and now wants to walk in like nothing happened. Nah, we don't play like that here. Madison deleted all her social media within the hour. But the damage was already done. The final blow came when Ethan's wife, yes, wife, called me. Apparently, Madison didn't know he was married with a child of his own. His wife, Lillian, had tracked everything after finding a secret phone bill and hotel charges. She asked to meet in person, and I agreed. We met at a coffee shop the next day. She was elegant, composed, but I could see the pain in her eyes. I want you to know, she said. My divorce lawyer is filing tomorrow. I'll be naming Madison in the suit. Alienation of affection. It's still legal in our state. I nearly choked on my coffee. And she added, if you need a witness for custody court, I'll testify. I nodded. You just became my favorite person this month. She smiled. Let's burn them both. Chapter 6. The final blow. By the time Madison stepped back into court a month later, she looked nothing like the woman who once controlled every room she entered. Gone were the designer outfits and sharp confidence. She wore a plain black dress that sagged to the shoulders, her makeup barely hiding the sleepless nights carved into her face. Her eyes, once so commanding, flicked nervously toward the judge, then to me, then to the empty seat where Ethan should have been. He never showed. Lillian, however, did. She took the stand during the custody hearing, calm and direct. I found explicit text between Madison and my husband while he and I were still married, she said. The affair began long before they left for Hawaii, and when they went on their little vacation, he told her son that he was on a business trip. He didn't even say goodbye. Then she handed the judge a printed folder with copies of photos and mails, and a letter Ethan wrote begging her not to ruin his public image. The judge, an older woman with no tolerance for games, stared at Madison like she was roadkill. I've heard enough, she said finally, voice hard. Miss Waters, your actions show a disturbing pattern of neglect and self-interest. You abandoned your children without warning, failed to make contact for weeks, and placed them in emotional distress. Madison wiped her eyes. I was just overwhelmed. You were in Maui, the judge snapped, not rehab, not a hospital or resort. Her gavel slammed down. Full legal and physical custody awarded to Mr. Walker. Visitation denied until further court review. You will undergo a full psychiatric evaluation before the court reconsiders your parental rights. This court is adjourned. Madison gasped like she'd been punched. Wait, no. Please, I didn't mean. But the bailiff had already approached her. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood, buttoned my coat and walked out of the courtroom into the brisk morning air. Later that evening, Madison sent me one last message. You ruined me. I stared at the screen, then typed my reply. Number, you did that all by yourself. Epilogue. The kids are doing better now. Emma no longer cries before bed. Tyler started playing baseball again. Leigh even drew a picture of Daddy the hero for her class project. As for Madison, last I heard, she moved back in with her mother in a small town 3 states away, unemployed and battling a lawsuit from Lillian, Ethan. He lost his job, his marriage, and most of his reputation in our circle. Some say he's living in a cheap studio apartment alone. Me? I'm not bitter. I'm just done and free. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is living a life they can never be part of again. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Tell us what you would have done in the comments below.